Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel. This is another episode of Getting in Shape with Yukitsu, playing Shogun 2 Total War since that last match was cut off a little bit abruptly. I've turned off mixed avatars for this one just because I've been playing so many Follow the Samurai armies that I wanted to change it up by making sure that I fought a definite standard one. Here I've got a 4-star standard one. He's got a picture of Napoleon. He's got a journeyman swordsman, a bit of leadership, and he favors a balanced army, so his general is going to be able to kick my general's butt in melee combat. So I'm going to try and avoid that with all I can. I'm using that famous armory again, and a straw practice dummy. I'm probably going to keep the army as I've got it here. I've got 3 Lone Sword Ashigaru, including my veterans. I've got my Katana Samurai veterans. I have 2 Yari Ashigaru, Bow Samurai, and 2 Light Cavalry. Looking at this, my opponent favors a balanced army as well, so we'll have to see how this goes in terms of that. Give him a bit of time to set up there. Looks like he's got his army all ready, so let's go ahead and hit ready. Now, the army I'm taking in this particular matchup is a little bit weak. It's just because I've got a sort of funny money amount that I'd rather not be at. But these Lone Sword Ashigaru can actually be a pretty excellent unit for their cost. They're pretty inexpensive and they come in a large unit size. So they can do good things. The problem is that they have such crushingly low morale. So what I'm going to have to do in this particular battle is just make sure that I keep in mind the morale of my units, since it's very likely to go away very quickly, especially if my opponent has guns. On the other hand, I have got a good samurai unit with that veterancy, and I've got some bonuses to my sword units, so I should be in a pretty strong position here. The armory will help if he chose to focus on a lot of archers, and it'll help out in melee as well, so it was a pretty strong choice in my opinion. It's a pretty open map. It's got some hills, but there is the one wood in the middle that we could contest. I think I might focus on shrines instead, depending on what they are and where they are. This map is one of those ones that's sort of generic. It's nothing too special, nothing out of the ordinary, and it gives it a pretty good variety of terrain. My opponent's not using any negative debuffs against me, so he's using all buffs for himself as well. I've started with the sword shrine here and the morale shrine over there, so I'm going to try and at least challenge both of them. And I'm going to do that by deploying all my units over here. I want one unit of Yaris covering my front here, my sword in the center, and an extra unit of Yaris covering the back. My general right here, and I'll put my light cav in hiding again. Now what I want to do in this particular case is make a drive straight forward. Once I get to the sword dojo, I'm going to leave behind a Yari Ashigaru beside it. I'm going to have to try and capture that as quickly as possible. I'm going to move my way up to the shrine and try and make sure that he doesn't get that either. So my opponent has got matchlocks, and I'm guessing he's got Naginata Samurai. No, he's got Bulletproof Samurai and Naginata Samurai. So he's got a much smaller army than I do. He's also got Lone Sword Ashigaru. What kind of guns are these? These are heavy gunners. These are a special DLC unit. I'm going to spread out all my units here. And this is actually really deadly, since he can potentially just kill my general. With one good volley here. Now the problem with heavy gunners is that you can't actually use your units to meat shield against them. They just sort of automatically go through your meat shield and hit whatever else is behind them. So I'm going to move my bows up forward here and just try and move all around here. The reason being, I don't want my units to get caught up in such a way that they're going to get caught by his heavy gunners. Now his heavy gunners are moving way too far forward here. And now that they've fired their first shots, I can fire or move off with my light cav. And since my units are in loose formation and they're so spread out, I can easily afford to take a few shots from him. Just gonna skirmish him off again. So I've got the sword dojo now. Ooh, I just lost most of my light cav. I didn't run them away fast enough, so that's going to be a pretty bad problem here. On the other hand, I'm going to have to probably move in about now. He's got cav coming in from the wing here. So I'm going to move this one back around here. Here I managed to get some light cav into him. His generals charged my light cav. I'm going to let that happen. My units are going to be in trouble very quickly here just because my general's so far away, but just trying to keep my units maneuvering around the backside here. Get my units rallied, get the morale up. Trying to push his light cavalry through my spears, but they are going to get into my samurai here. Things are looking pretty grim at the front here just because the units are so much better than mine. But I have got my Katana Samurai into those guys. This front sort of stabilized just because I've overwhelmed his units with so many numbers. Just going to start firing at his general here. But I don't really need bow support anymore since everything's in melee. His gunners shatter. His Avatar's bodyguard is going to get wiped out by my Katana Samurai. Since as good as his guy is in melee, yeah, he died and that'll cause his entire front to shatter. So even though I was using only a Lone Sword Ashigaru, they were able to get through the front there just because Ashigaru, even with sword units, even though they're Ashigaru, are still better in melee in certain respects than Naginata's. It's just because they come in larger units, they're cheaper, so I can field 3 units to his 2. And of course those bulletproof samurai are similar. They're very good against arrows, but I could shoot at something else instead. So good game to my opponent. That was a pretty rough match for me. I had to be on my toes at all times. It's a good thing I was paying attention, otherwise that cavalry would have swept around behind and wiped out my archers for free, but obviously he had to try and push through my spears. So I think he clicked the order on them and then he sort of didn't pay attention, although since he punched through he must have been using click-through orders. If you keep clicking once your cavalry is engaged in melee by a blocking unit, they'll eventually force their way past them. It's just they'll take a lot of casualties on the way through, so that's why they got killed so quickly, I think. So let's go to our units results screen. Now what my opponent was probably trying to do there was use those heavy gunners to overwhelm me. It's something that happens against a lot of newer players very easily, is that those heavy gunners will kill like 80 people in a single volley just because their bullets have that penetration. And once that happens, usually the player is going to sort of panic since he just lost a huge number of units and he'll do something somewhat indecisive. So I just gained a skill point. I've got Echigo, Nodachi Samurai. They're a great unit. You'll probably be seeing them once I get into medium funds battle. They're a bit expensive otherwise. Got a new veteran slot. Clan influence points, which aren't really important. So that means I didn't find any new random retainers or armor, but that's okay. And I've got another unit of veteran lone swords here. I'm going to definitely upgrade these guys. I like veteran lone swords. They're a pretty good value for their cost. Blue pants. I'm going to rename these all eventually. I just don't really know what to call them right now since it's on the fly and live commentary and all that. But I'm pretty sure that I'll think of something later. So looking at the numbers here, I deployed 1,072 men, I lost 415, but I killed 413. So unit statistics here. You can see my opponent deployed a very small army. The bulk came from that Lone Sword Ashigaru, which sort of made his army a little bit larger than it would have otherwise been. But for the most part, his cost was tied up in these Naginata Samurai and these Bulletproof Samurai. The Bulletproof Samurai are incredible murderers, but not for their cost. They cost like 1,200 or something. They cost a ridiculous amount of koku. The Naginata Samurai are pretty good discount, but they did far worse than the Bulletproof Samurai. The Heavy Gunners, again, didn't really do as much as they could have otherwise. They did get 40 kills, but a lot of that I think was actually a melee, and that one volley against my Light Cav. My Light Cav, they were just sort of there to tie up my opponent, to get mobility to my forces, and to deny that shrine. If I hadn't had that Light Cavalry, my opponent would have had the shrine, his units wouldn't have broken, and I might have been in a lot more trouble than I was. Going up here, you can see that my white hats and my white swords have both leveled up. That means I'm going to be able to get a new ability for them. I'll check out what I want them to have in a little bit. But here you can just see the difference that numbers can make in a battle. If you take a very, very elite force, you can put a lot of pressure on an opponent just because you know that your units are going to reliably do well no matter what the situation. But what happened was I spread out my entire force, concentrated them around by having them pile in on that same melee from all sorts of different angles, and then made sure that my Avatar's bodyguard got in there after those heavy gunners were tied up. So once I've done all of that, my units aren't necessarily going to break, and it gives me a chance to do things like kill his general, capture the shrine, or what I was trying to do was get around his flank a little bit and grind my way through, just because I knew I could. And the reason I knew I could is because, like, those Naginata Samurai, those Lone Sword Ashigaru I knew were going to get killed pretty quickly. And those Bulletproof Samurai, all those things are not necessarily that good. So once my Katana Samurai were free to go in there, that was basically GG. Let's just get over to the screen here. As you can see, I now have access to Etchu. Just going to take that for my next battle. Just going to go look at our team roster here. As you can see, both these units are heavily battered, so I won't be able to use them next match. But for now, what I can do is throw them back in the veterans thing here, is go level all of them up. So what I want these guys to have, more melee attack. What I want these guys to have, more melee attack. And this might seem a little bit one-dimensional, but it's really what I take them for. What I take these sword units for is that heavy melee punch to try and break straight through the enemy. And once you've got a couple melee upgrades to these guys, they become very, very good at it. So now that I'm down one unit of veteran Katana Samurai, what I'm going to want to do for my next match is probably take 2 vanilla Katana Samurai. Since taking a lot of vanilla units and then a lot of vanilla lone swords is probably going to be a bad idea. Now, my Avatar's bodyguard, oops, wrong button. I did get a new skill for my Avatar's bodyguard, so let's go check that out. What I want to keep going for is this increased aura. I want to get stand and fight, which is a very strong ability, and I want to get the scare enemies ability. So I need 5 in leadership for that. I need 5 in leadership, and I need 2 in rally for that, so I'll put another point in rally. So 2 more levels, I'll be able to get increased aura. Stand and fight requires 10 points in leadership, so that'll be a long way off from now. But for now, this is looking pretty good. As you can see, I've switched up the armor on my avatar, so we'll see if I find anything new for that. I'll fiddle with this to get the money closer to the 5,000 amount. Last time I was off by 60 koku, which I usually don't like doing, but it happens sometimes. You can still win if you're off by 60 koku, it's not a huge deal. That's actually one of the things that's nice about the DLC units, that they let you round off the change a little bit, even if it doesn't really necessarily make your army much stronger on the whole with doing so. Anyway, this has been the Yukitsu Times. I hope you've found this informative, and I hope to see you all next time.